Welcome back to Raised by Giants live discussion. Welcome everyone in the chat. Good to see you guys and any moderators or channel members out there. We have an amazing show here for you today with returning guest Elana Freeland, here to talk to us about electromagnetic persuasion, MK Ultra, and what I call remote MK Ultra, a technological version of MK Ultra, and much more. But before I bring her on, super chats and super stickers are available and will be read out live during the show. And if you have any questions that you would like addressed, that is the best way to get them answered. Send in those super chats. PayPal and Buy Me a Coffee links are also in the description and are a great way to help support the show and my work. And also Ryder Ranger channel memberships are available and are a great way to help support the show monthly for less than a cup of coffee. And if you become a Ryder Rangers channel member, you get access to bonus episodes. And so become a Ryder Ranger channel member today and help support the show monthly. And check the community tab page of the channel to get access to those episodes. So with that down, we have very popular guest, writer, teacher, and lecturer who researches classified issues such as geoengineering, MK Ultra, invasive electromagnetic weapons, the author of several books, including Under an Ionized Sky and many more. Elana Freeland, welcome back to the show. It's good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. It's been a while.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I'm very excited to speak with you. And last time you were on was over a year ago. Can't believe it. It's been that long. Time flies, right?
Well, I mean, even when you get older like me, time is totally different. I mean, it's just speeding by, just speeding. Unbelievable.
I don't think that you're old. You're 30 years young, Elana. You don't look a day over 30. Now, we went over a lot of things last time, but I think it's important to give a refresher here in the beginning. And you've done a lot of research. I've read your latest book, Transhumanism, a very long read. But from your research, Elana, when did the government or the military start developing these type of electromagnetic weapons? Was this before or after MK Ultra?
Oh, it had to be before because in Arthur Furstenberg's excellent book, which I highly recommend, The Invisible Rainbow, it's a history of electricity. He goes through and gives you a timetable as to how long we've had electricity and been able to create electromagnetic fields that can be then used in a weapon way. So that's been since, since the 1700s in one way. But in another way, it really took hold in the 20th century. And so many military objectives have been underway since then. I always think of the first thing I remember is, the chemical warfare of World War I from 1914 to 1918. That was really, truly chemical warfare. They call it trench warfare because soldiers were told to dig these trenches in the fields of France. And it was the Germany versus the Allied forces as usual. And it was those chemicals were provided by what we now call Big Pharma. So let's include the idea of, with electromagnetism, let's include the idea of chemicals with that, because it's really the chemicals that produce extraordinary events of electromagnetism, even in the atmosphere now, that the atmosphere is completely ionized. And that basically means it's been electrified. And that has been done when HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project up in Gakona, Alaska, only one of many ionosphere heaters, but definitely the most powerful, at least until recently, when in Tromsø, Norway, they have come up with a new one that probably puts HAARP in the shade a bit. But with that invention, they were able to use phased array antennas, which are very different from the rotational antennas that we're accustomed to, where it kind of electrifies everything around you. These phased array antennas can be all consolidated into one massive beam. And it's really, to me, the birth of this type of antenna that has given birth to the electromagnetic weapons, the DEWs, directed energy weapons, that are are normally used in our atmosphere on the Earth. Not like the big fancy ones that we saw in the movie Star Wars, where you see these beam weapons zapping people in the upper atmosphere or in space. So let's stick with the phased array, because that is scary enough. It can it's doing tremendous damage to many targeted individuals who I believe are simply being used as sitting ducks or guinea pigs, whatever animal image appeals to you. And when I think of the United States, with a population of supposedly around 350 million, I think that probably, and I'm being very conservative, probably 1.5 million people are being zapped in their homes, in their workplaces, in the street, in their cars, and many of them don't even know that they are being zapped. That's the key to this whole thing, and having to learn how to recognize different states of consciousness now that they are being hit, not particularly by the CIA directly or anything, or the FBI directly, but many of these private security forces have been are doing it so that there's no linkage to something the government could get involved with.
Right. See, that's the thing with this, with the targeted individual thing. A lot of the symptoms that people claim to have are some of the exact same symptoms that people have of electromagnetic sensitivity. I mean, if you take into account that most of the population is living in a 1 to 2 bedroom house or a small apartment, they're essentially sleeping right next to a Wi-Fi router.
Right.
And let's
Right.
say that most people live in the proximity of multiple other houses and businesses. I mean, even the smallest apartment complex at least has 40 apartments. That's at least 30 Wi-Fi routers, right, give or take, in a concentrated area. And I live in a pretty, my area is surrounded by at least 150 houses. Wherever you are, just open up your Wi-Fi settings on your phone and see how many Wi-Fi routers pop up. That means that you're in the radius of all those signals. And
Right.
I guess what I'm saying is that some of it may not be intentional, but a side effect of the technology that we're using, like, definitely for people that have electromagnetic sensitivity. You know, I wake up sometimes and I have a ringing in my ear at least once a week. Sometimes I wake up with a headache. That doesn't mean that I'm targeted, but it means that whatever's being produced by the
Yeah.
technology that we're using could possibly be negatively affecting me and other people, or even some natural phenomena. But in today's age, it's hard to go without Wi-Fi, right?
Right. But it is, if you get to know, now I know approximately, well, I know probably a dozen targeted individuals. And, and I pay attention, like you are, to symptoms, what they're going through, like the tinnitus, and then headaches, uh, sweating. There are all kinds of symptoms that often go with electrosensitivity. But if you're around them and you're paying really close attention, often you will be able to determine the difference between an ES person and someone who is being purposely targeted, because you will see the program that the AI that has this person on some sort of electronic leash is carrying out in this person's psyche. And that's the key. Those are the ones that I am particularly watching. Otherwise, I just talk to people about making sure that your electromagnetic signature, your footprint in your home, in your workplace, whatever, being aware of the technology and educating yourself about the technology without any of these lame excuses of, oh, well, I've never really been that attracted to science. Unfortunately, we're living in an exceedingly technological era, and whether or not you would choose to learn about these technologies, it seems that for your own health and the health of your children and grandchildren and friends and neighbors, that you would have to educate yourself to some degree. And if you have the thought form that oh, our leaders wouldn't allow us to be endangered, I don't know what planet you're from, but that's not how things are done here. They're constantly experimenting with electromagnetism, because the difference between an electric light going on, flipping on, and the electromagnetic intensity of a targeting situation is huge, because you are now in an electromagnetic field, at least one, if not more, whereby those can be manipulated in order to uh, damage your nervous system, or as we saw with the so-called Havana syndrome. I love how they name these things, or any other type of situation where it's obvious that they are using the electromagnetic field for destruction of the nervous system, or simply access to your thoughts, access to your mind, your brain. And so I think it's time for us to really educate ourselves to some degree. And I admit that it's difficult, because it isn't like they're sending out pamphlets for us to prepare ourselves for this. This is all done sight unseen. We're not educated for this. Still, high school programs, they don't cover any of this in the high school science program. So we have to go after it ourselves, and that's why I'm paying particular attention to, I'm known for geoengineering, but the truth is that in that last book, that big fat one that you delved into, geoengineered transhumanism, in that book I'm tying together, let's see now, chemicals, electromagnetism, nanotechnology, and synthetic biology. I'm tying all those together and looking at it through a lens of, yes, our ability to withstand, to survive this technology as human 1.0, not a cyborg human 2.0 model of transhumanism. So I think, I do concentrate on the electromagnetics, because I have found that of all four of those big, massive subjects that it took 650 pages for me to talk about, that they are the primary in that, believe it or not, is the electromagnetism. And that's the one we're mired in. We're really steeped in it, because, even what you mentioned before about all your neighbors and all the 5G, 6G systems around us. Also, you've got the 60 hertz in the walls. All of this could be used in a targeting situation. And so we have to bring that into our consciousness, and really take stock of our relationship with it, of our relationship with all our toys. I don't own a television. What do I need a television for? I have a computer for, writing books, but I can also go on the internet and look at old movies and that sort of thing. I have no iPhone, because an iPhone is, as I probably told you the last time I was on the show, it's a weapon system. It was created by the military. It's a complete weapon system, whereas the TV, yeah, that's a weapon system too, but benign compared to the bells and whistles on the very sophisticated, brilliant invention of the iPhone. So, we need to really kind of be adults about this, and not, wow, fast movie downloads. That's not really what we're interested in here. We need to really come to terms with the weaponization of our entire environment, by which those things can be used. Now, I had an experience, Christmas, I might as well just throw it out there. I'm normally not targeted. Believe it or not, I'm allowed to write these books, Probably because I'm living in an era when people don't read that much, right? And they can't retain what they're reading, and they can't turn the page and remember what the heck they just read on the previous page. So that may be the reason, I don't know. But I was hit hard on Christmas, right on Christmas. Thank you, nice Christmas present from the guys who control the technology. My two symptoms were one, I could not talk because the phone rang. I got up. It was early morning. I got up to go answer the phone, and it was a friend. And I start talking, and it's all gibberish. Do you remember when the newscasters on TV? We saw some of that in some clips of the newscasters suddenly just their mouth turning to mush, and they can't say the words in the language. That was me. That was the first thing I noticed. The second thing I noticed was I had lost my chronology. I thought it was after New Year's when it really was Christmas. I thought Christmas had happened a couple of weeks before. And when I realized what had happened to me, I immediately knew that it had been done to me. And I was able to put a few clues that were leading up to that event together to see that I had, in a way, been warned that something was coming, but I didn't pick up on it. So that's what I did to counter it was, no, I didn't pick up the phone and call a doctor. No, I didn't run down to the ER. No, I'm not going to go to that institution that is more dangerous than you can possibly imagine. No, I sat down and I thought, well, the first thing I'm going to do is reestablish my chronology. So I had my calendar, and I had found out from my friend on the phone that today was X date. It was that date. Okay, so I start there, and then I just made my way backward, all the way back, and then I went forward to where I thought it was. I thought it was after New Year's. So slowly, my brain and I put back together my chronology. Once the chronology was in place, I had no trouble with my speaking or my verbal center or anything. I don't know if they're connected, but that's kind of the experience I had. And nothing has happened to me since. It was simply done to me as a sort of Merry Christmas is how I look at it, because the people who follow my writing and my speaking and have me on some sort of list, they hit me, generally speaking, I choose to see it anyway, as a message. And otherwise, I am not one of those targeted individuals whom I know who are always targeted, 24/7, no breaks, no vacations. Shifts in the programming, yes. Shifts in who the handler is at certain points, yes. Sometimes a human agent, sometimes, most of the time, it appears to be an AI. So, it's time for at least people like me, where I want to write a book for targeted individuals after I finish the synthetic biology book next, where I'm telling them how this all works in general at this point, because that's going to be the fastest developing. And I think you mentioned MK Ultra. Yeah, this is the apotheosis of MK Ultra. This is where they can do it from a distance. They don't need to have you in a clinic and to give you chemicals and hypnosis and then hit you with some terrible trauma in order to split your personality 10 ways and then to program each one of those ways. They don't have to do that anymore. They can do it all remotely now. And that, I think, is, it sounds like bad news to me.
Yeah, I think that it's more difficult for them to infiltrate or break into a sober, rational, sane, critical mind. And I think that is defense. Now, you can break down a rational, sane mind through trauma and pumping it full of drugs and hitting the subject with repeated phrases and imagery like we see all the time, every day. And reading through the MK Ultra declassified programs from the CIA, that's exactly what they were doing. They were traumatizing individuals through torture, food, water, sleep deprivation, drugging
Rape,
them with
rape. Don't forget
CIA
rape.
designer drugs,
Don't forget rape. Yeah, right.
depowdering them, psychically driving them. And the CIA found that you could get a subject to believe whatever they wanted them to believe, regardless if it was real or not. But they first had to break them down psychologically, right?
Hmm.
It's not going to work as well on a sane, rational, critical thinking mind. The mind has to be broken down. And the problem with a broken down mind is that the subject that's been put through that kind of programming is subjected to paranoia, hallucinations, and a whole host of mental illnesses, which makes figuring out if anything is real happening to them in the first place. So what we really have here is a whole host of people with distorted views and beliefs to the point that they're incapable of seeing any kind of truth, which also affects their discernment and critical thinking capacity.
Well, I hate to pop your bubble about this, but they now, by satellite, with a very sophisticated EEG, are able to determine what they choose to call your evoked potential. And the evoked potential is just one of your frequencies for how your brain works, you individually, how your brain works. So if they get your evoked potential, which it doesn't appear to me from the literature, such as it is, I mean, one of my main people is to read is Robert Duncan's. Uh, he has a book online, which kind of snuck away from him somehow. He should have published it as a book so that he could make some money from it, but it's free on the internet, and it's called The Matrix Deciphered. And in that, he talks, because he used to work for the NSA and the CIA, etc., as a scientist. He actually worked on these programs by which you break into through frequency into the brain, and then you establish this evoked potential. So it appears that they can get the evoked potential. I know they have mine. They can get the evoked potential very easily. They don't need, they can see straight through the skull, and that term. They use a few other terms. I'm not remembering what they are, but there's a lot of confusion over terms, and you know that. So you need to translate it, but they can very much. There's nothing to keep them out of your brain, to my knowledge.
Well, what I mean by like a sober and rational mind is that if let's say that you were just randomly hearing voices in your head, to a sane and rational mind, you would be like, that's not real, right? But if you're drugged, if you've been traumatized, if you're on some form of pharmaceutical medication, which I read a study from 2014 to 2016, which said that almost half the United States population is under some form of pharmaceutical drug.
Yeah,
Right?
like
And
the
then they
SS.
have these mass traumatizing events,
Yeah,
worldwide, right? And
yeah.
that creates an opening for this kind of technology. Now, someone that has a rational, critical thinking, sober mind that's not on these kind of drugs, that hasn't been through certain kinds of traumas, I think that it's going to be more difficult. I'm not saying that it's not possible. I think it's going to be more difficult because these people are going to be like, well, that's not real. That's fabrication. That's fake. And we have all these ideas and theories of, and people talking about that they see holographic simulations. I mean, Kathy O'Brien talks about how she was shown a holographic simulation of a reptilian, and that was to get her talking about reptilians, that reptilian extraterrestrial aliens are to blame for everything that's going on in the world, when it's really human beings that are behind it.
Right, right. I totally agree, and that's very developed now, as we know. So the advertisements in the sky is no stretch. The idea that they will, like in that first scene of the, what's the name of that that movie about the guy who ends the lives of the transhumans. And Decker, his name is Decker. He's a, you know what I'm talking about. I'm sorry, I'm not remembering the term for what he is. He retires these entities that look entirely human but are not. They're from a cyborg kind of creation. In that one, you see the reality of it, of these beings, but their enhancements. It was really great pre-programming of what is now going to be coming down the pike. I feel, given how far synthetic biology has developed, and then you realize that these entities, and that last scene, I'll never forget that last scene in which uh, the uh, the entity that is being it has a certain lifespan, and it's meeting the end of its lifespan. It's not being killed. It's simply meeting the end of its lifespan. And the beauty of the final speech it gives, and then it just sort of switches off. Uh, that that to me now is that the future here. I think that we are, in my lifetime, I'm surprised I'm still here for this amazing thing I knew was coming many years ago. Uh, but I'm thrilled to be here because the fight for what is truly human, and if it means that much to many people, I mean, I can think of some people I've met, I don't think it means much of anything to them to remain truly human. For me, it has the divinity, as you probably remember, Ryder, that I'm a student of Rudolf Steiner. So for me, to be truly human and to run your own evolution of consciousness out of your free will and your own experiences and your own thoughts, and to be here on the earth as an independent agent, not subject to institutions, not subject to programming, not subject to any of that, is a gift. It's fantastic, and I want that to remain through this era of the geneticists and the synthetic biologists attempting to change the very nature of the human being. And I think that's how we should look at the electromagnetic targeting of people. Is they're just running experiments to see how you would run a race uh, by AI, how you would run the nervous system. Can they work with the nervous system as it is, or are they going to need to change out the nerves with, for example, graphene oxide? Are they going to need to have a completely synthetic biology, or will they be able to do a dual use on the human being as it is, and be able to control and run what they're doing from a distance? I think that's what's going on with most of the targeted individuals. It's all about transhumanism, just like you said about the gender, the transgender uh, pressure on youth now. That too has to do with this future of transhumanism. Is that? Do you think that's possible?
I think so. I think that it's a setup for the human augmented AI, human augmented cyborgs. It's a way to skirt around all the laws. So whenever we are full fledged merging with machine and have these types of implants, then there's no laws to get around. And speaking of implants, you mentioned in your book that there's this mobile user objective system, which you call MUOS, which is a wireless handheld receiver that was used by the military to pick up voices and data directly from the public's minds, which was built by Lockheed Martin and Boeing. Have you
Yeah.
ever ran into someone that has an implant in their brain to essentially control their actions like a full-fledged Manchurian Candidate style?
Well, I would need certain equipment in order to determine the truth of that. But because I have helped MK Ultra survivors write their books about their experiences. I've done that with maybe a half dozen MK Ultras for free, of course, because they rarely have means. The CIA or whoever's controlling them today make sure that they own nothing, that they've never been able to go to a proper training school for whatever, even though they're brilliant. Most MK Ultras are quite brilliant. They, but they have been to I think it's okay that I say her name, Hildegard Staninger, Staninger, for people who are interested. She does scans, and she's very expensive. But the scanning is very detailed and will definitely find every implant in the body. And then she will also be involved in setting up a surgery, if the person has the means to pay for that, a surgery by which those various implants are removed. And so then those implants come out and they're highly sophisticated. Of course, the older models were larger. The new models are very tiny, not quite nanoscale, but certainly micrometer, yeah. And then that person has a chance at not being run from a distance. But here's the problem with that. We now have breathed in from these chemical trails, which is a delivery system. I go into that in my books. It's one of the three big delivery systems, the other two being inoculation and GMO foods. And then, of course, the chemical trails. We breathe those nano-sized, and that's 1/1000th of a meter. That's how big a nano is. We breathe all that technology in, and then many of them ensconce themselves in our tissues, in our organs, various places. They are programmed, and they are definitely electromagnetically connected to wherever central control is for them. And then they can be reprogrammed from a distance. So that's our problem now. It's not so much implants. Implants are not entirely essential. Perhaps if you have a president of the United States, or you have a CEO of a very large corporation like Boeing or something, then you will have an implant that is dependable and can be fixed remotely, whatever. But generally speaking, for the plebeians among us, we are loaded with these nanobots, and they can be definitely programmed from a distance, and they will be able to help whatever targeting is going on if there's an electromagnetic field. That's all they need. They just need an electromagnetic field, and then they've got the person who's programming them with whatever they're supposed to be doing. So that's kind of our problem now. I'm not in touch with the Staninger person anymore, but I assume she's still in business and making quite a bit of money. But I think that the problem now is you might think of it as much cheaper because it's very hard to get rid of this nanobot business. And they, as we hear over and over and over again, they are self-assembling, which means, you take in a dozen of them and they will quickly be 144,000 of them. So.
Yeah, I think another issue that I found within the community is like what I was mentioning with Kathy O'Brien and her being showed this holographic image of a reptilian to try and make her mind go the reptilian route and not, blow the whistle that these are humans doing this to other humans. I think that there's been a concerted effort to try and blame a lot of the crimes that humans have been doing to other humans on some external force that nobody ever sees, that nobody can even prove that exists. And that's a
Exactly.
really big problem because you have alien implants, right? That people think that the implants are coming from aliens when they're coming from humans. You have people thinking that the aliens are creating human hybrids when it's really a transhumanist agenda. It's humans doing it to humans. Everything that
Yeah.
people have blamed on aliens and extraterrestrials and their agenda is really humans doing it to other humans. I mean, look around in our society, and that's done on purpose too, so that they don't have to take any responsibility for the things that they've done. They just shuffle it off onto some mythological thing that no one can even prove exists.
Right, and that goes all the way back to Project Bluebird, all of those UFO projects that everybody's talking about under the so-called Disclosure Project. That I mean, it's old news to me. I don't know how people missed it because I've seen it 6 ways to Sunday. It's old news to me that one of the purposes of bringing paperclip Nazis over to the United States and basically handing to them carte blanche all of our institutions and our rocket program and all the things that are military in nature uh, was along with MK Ultra, but that's the biggest thing that we got from them, what they had done to people in the camps. But this idea that we have to then think that humans can't do this. Uh, these Nazis were extremely skilled, and they had traveled the world making alliances with Tibetans, Tibetan Buddhists, various secret societies, and I'm not saying that they were not able to strike alliances with entities of other dimensions. Because in my chapter on CERN in Under an Ionized Sky, I make it very clear that CERN is, I call it, the chapter is named The Temple of CERN. I make it very clear that with the D-Wave computer, the adiabatic, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly, computer, quantum computer, that CERN is able to contact other dimensions. And the last I checked, the military had, I can't remember the exact number, but it was 72 different dimensions. I mean, we know, we who are, getting the dregs of the science that is known, the little teeny weeny bits from the classified projects, we don't realize how far this science has developed. We don't need to import aliens to explain certain breakthroughs that are made here. Not at all. I mean, the consciousness of the human being often is not known by the masses because they're having a sensory experience, and that's all they're interested in is a sensory experience. When the experience of being human has multiple levels, but you need to have the will to develop yourself. You have to have the resources by which you can obtain that kind of knowledge. So, and then you need to experiment, experiment, experiment. So we have a very elite, and I know you must know about it, Ryder, but the ones I recommend that people study for proof of what I'm about to say are the Jason groups. The Jason groups. These are the scientists who are the creme de la creme of all science, and they are given. They are under certain duress of the people they serve, the elites they serve, but they are also given immense freedom in order to pursue their experimentation with various things that we know next to nothing about. And I accept that. I'm only here to basically explain the geoengineering. And while I was pursuing the geoengineering, which is not at all what they tell you it is, I came across the electromagnetics and was able to plunge into that and learn a lot. And now I want to write something for targeted individuals about the electromagnetics that they're facing wherever they go. It's very, but I want to repeat that thing I told you, Ryder, just so you know about it, that with the people I know, which is maybe a dozen, targeted individuals, I'm satisfied they are, yes, very targeted. I see different programs in them, and that certainly makes sense that you would put an electromagnetic leash on an individual. And these are all young people. They're all in their 30s, by the way. Then you would you have the leash on them so that you're getting data from them and you're keeping track of your little experiment. But at the same time, you have access to their brain, their evoked potential. You can put different thoughts in their brain. They're having a constant V2K experience, voice to skull, and that is easy peasy to do with satellites. So that is how it's going now, and I'm convinced that a lot of people have a lot of shame about this because they know they're going to be made fun of or they're going to be doubted. Now, that's probably why I've attracted so many targeted individuals. I'm actually pretty well known in Europe, interestingly, for being there for targeted individuals. Even though I haven't written any books about targeting, I have mentioned it in all the books I've written about geoengineering. Because, of course, in a wireless construct in the atmosphere that is completely ionized, well, shoot, you can have they're doing plasma experiments on targeted individuals from way up in space, or at least up in the higher stratosphere. So, let's move our little furniture around in our heads and realize that, of course, transhumanism is going to need a lot of data about how you can control all the people that you have on various leashes, and let's believe some of these people. Let's listen to their story and the details. Let's not argue with them, because believe me, we don't know enough about the targeted experience, and these people are basically leading us to the next era. As I also say, this whole transhuman thing is moving us. We're being shoved into another era. We're leaving behind the Einsteinian, Newtonian era, and we're entering very much a quantum era. So, let's relax, learn about the technology to the degree that we can, and when people start telling us weird stories out in the street or at work or wherever, let's listen. Let's just listen without judgment, because you may hear something that has extraordinary technological sophistication in it. It's not from reptilians. It's not from Alpha Centauri. It's from here, and the CIA always has its wonderful little cover stories. And they can also, we can be influenced by the CIA or their minions to write off a lot of things and not probe and enter into and listen in order to learn how this is working. Now, I've done that. I use Socratic method all the time with targeted individuals. I want the details. I want them to be exact in telling me. I ask question after question after question because I'm learning about this technology. And are there entities involved? There may be, but I'm not an entity expert. But I know there are entities because I'm a student of Rudolf Steiner. Of course there are entities. But I probably don't, will never be an expert in that because I'm not psychic particularly. I'm insightful, but I'm not psychic. Despite the fact that my grandmother was a Romanian gypsy, clairvoyant, but I didn't get any of that. I just have a certain sensitivity and a willingness to listen to people because I love human beings. I want human beings to remain able to develop their evolution as a conscious species out of their own will forces, out of their own free will. I do not want the CIA with its cute little programs running people. I do not want somebody to whip out their cell phone and press a button and suddenly I'm on an AI system. I refuse to accept that for our future as human beings.
It's interesting that you bring up entities, because that's what Jerry Marzinski, which is a psychiatrist that's worked in hospitals and in prisons and psychiatric hospitals in the United States for 30 years. And he came to the conclusion that these voices that schizophrenic people hear are demonic entities.
Yeah, yeah. And I tend to think that the importation of the word alien is simply another part of demons, don't you?
Yeah, it seems to be heading in that direction. I've had him on my show like 3 times now, and I have his book, A Journey into the Psychotic Mind, Breaking the Spell of the Ivory Tower, which I really highly recommend. It's a really quick read, but it really details all of his research and everything that he's done. But I think that the problem with the targeted individual stuff, Elana, is that there's so much nonsense out there, that there's so many people that are muddying the waters between what's real, what's not, what's fake, what's fabrication.
Yeah.
And there's so many people with so many ridiculous stories that it makes anything real difficult and hard for people to actually believe. And you said that you only know around 10 people out of all the other the people that you think is like verified that you believe that possibly might be in some of this electronic harassment. I mean, that's very little amount of people compared to the amount of people that claim that
right.
That's going on.
You're right. But regarding the reality question, it's funny you'd bring that up, because that is on my mind so much because of the synthetic biology. In the 4th book that I just finished for Inner Traditions, the 4th geoengineering book, I have a section on synthetic biology. And while going into some of the stuff I wanted to include in that chapter, I was struck again and again and again with how in the papers and patents that are coming out along the lines of synthetic biology and gain of function for patents and that sort of thing, it's really fascinating that the people writing these and those teams of mostly Chinese names, I have to say, who are writing these papers and doing these experiments. It seems that they want to confuse us as to what is natural and what is artificial. And so they just skip that step. They don't even give you a flag that, hey, we're going to, we did this gain of function addition to this bacteria in order to produce this, whatever it is. And now it's actually synthetic. They don't tell us. So that we're left again with the same query that you're alluding to regarding people who are in fantasy land or something compared to the actual targeted individuals. How do you tell the difference between what is real and what is unreal? Now, when someone has and I have listened to that wonderful psychiatrist. I've listened to 2 of his tapes with interviewing people who were diagnosed schizophrenic. I mean, schizophrenia has got to be one of the biggest misdiagnoses going. And I wonder, how are we going to be able to tell the difference in that area and then in this synthetic biology area? And it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a real challenge. Just like I've had people contact me by email who say, I find myself having these horrible thoughts, and that's just not me. That's just not me. Where are they coming from? Well, that technology can certainly be done very easily with just the radio waves in or microwaves in your area. So that's no mystery. But for you to be able to tell that you are now, I mean, it's very scary. First of all, you tend to think your headspace is yours. I don't think that anymore. I assume that every phone call, every email, every thought I have is being accessed by the people who watch me, just to keep me, in their sights. Not that I'm particularly dangerous or I'm no Martin Luther King or anything like that, but just to keep tabs on me, on what I'm doing, because I'm a writer. That goes with the territory when you're writing about technology, especially. Yeah, I think of a lot about that. What is real, what isn't. I mean, with targeted individuals, fortunately, I'm not in a position where I need to tabulate and categorize and weigh this and that, because I'm not conducting science with these people. I'm listening to their stories in order to see if I can understand the technology better. That's really, I have no idea of how to save them, but I listen and I ask a lot of questions. And that's scientific method as well.
Yeah, we just really have no idea how far our technology has gone. What affects our regular technology like computers, cell phones? I mean, hell, people normally use a microwave every single day to warm up their food. What is that doing to us? You know what I
Well,
mean?
that destroys the food value for one thing. I can assure you of that, because there's a magnetron in that microwave oven. A magnetron. That's a weapon. That's a weapon. It's in the Why are people still using microwave ovens? What, to save 5 minutes or something? What? It's crazy.
Yeah, just heat it up on the stove or throw it in the oven.
Yeah, or eat it at room temperature. I mean, it's like, yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know. That one is really bewildering. But I mean, we have smart meters on our homes too. They're deadly. They are deadly. So if you can get the human being, who is basically a hypnotic being, if you can get them to just accept something as the status quo, the way it goes, everybody's got one, everybody's fine, then you can have your will with them. That's the truth. Human beings are the most hypnotic creatures alive. I experience that whenever I go driving on the freeway. I'm basically hypnotized the whole time I'm on the freeway, even though I would like to think I'm being very conscious. Oh, I'll just hang this up.
Yeah, we don't really know the effects of our technology because there hasn't been enough time to properly study them. But I want to bring up a article really quickly before I forget that has to do with this implant that this gentleman went through in 2009. And this is from Wired. Court to defendant stop blasting this man's mind. Late last year, this is from July 1st of 2009. Late last year, James Wolbert went to court to stop his former business associate from blasting him with mind-altering electromagnetic radiation. Wolbert told the Skidworth County, Kansas panel that Jeremiah Redford threatened him with jolts of radiation after a disagreement over a business deal. Later, Walbert said he began feeling electric shock sensations, hearing electricity. Late last year, James Wilbert went to court to stop his former business associate from blasting him with mind-altering electromagnetic radiation. Walbert told the county Kansas panel that Jeremiah Redford threatened him with jolts of radiation after a disagreement over a business deal. Later, Walbert said he began feeling popping and ringing sounds in his ear. On December 30th, the court decided in Walbert's favor and issued a first of its kind order of protection, banning Redford from using electromagnetic means to further harass Wilbert. I recently took part in a BBC Radio 4 program, which took a lighthearted look into the real Manchurian candidate and examined whether there is any truth in the stories of mind control. It gave me a chance to look at the exotic non-lethal weapon concepts like the so-called telepathic ray gun, the system which beams sound directly into your skull, and the voice of God. talking fireball. Most of these projects are just lab experiments of examples of PowerPoint engineering. But in some legal policy and business circles, electromagnetic brain assaults are being taken seriously. Warburt's calls is supported by Jim Jest, a Republican member of Missouri House of Representatives. He's working on proposed legislation to address electronic harassment, including a bill against forced implantation of RFID chips. The UN is also taking the possibility of electromagnetic terrorism against people seriously. And for the first time, this year's European non-lethal weapon included a session on the social implications of non-lethal weapons, with specific reference to privacy, invasive remote interrogation, and behavioral influence application. Those who believe they're being targeted are getting a bit of official recognition. And that gentleman won his case in Missouri. I would show the video of that, but it has music and sound on it with this guy that's discussing it, and I don't want to get any weird things on YouTube. But that's a real thing. That's a real case. You can look up that case on Google and read all about it. But I thought that was just a really interesting one to bring up.
Was it recent this year? Was it this year or last year?
That was 2009.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah,
so
13, 14 years ago.
And I think the thing to say there is how seldom we hear about it. Just like geoengineering, you rarely see anything substantive about certain things, which leads you to think, oh, well, everything's okay there. That assumption that we have, that we will be told if it's not okay. But the truth is they want to let you know there are things going on, but not too often, not to where you actually carry it in your consciousness for now. And that's really unfortunate, because so many people suffer from that. I mean, sometimes somebody will send me something from the internet and I'll have to watch it, and my God, how young, and it's mostly youth. I notice it's mostly youths, and of course, youths are always the target because they're the next generation of adults, and they're now being programmed for, however the status quo intelligence agencies or whoever decides they should be programmed, which is why I think I see mainly youths are being programmed. They used to use old Vietnam veterans, and we all know that war is hell and that you can develop PTSD in war, and Vietnam was a very traumatic war for many reasons, mainly because of what the U.S. military was using GIs for as far as experimentation. So you hear that a vet is hearing voices or whatever, and you assume it's from that. You would not assume that there is something active that is tracking him and making this terrible experience go on and on and on. And we just need to be a little more open about this, realizing that this is how they experiment, is on thousands and thousands of people.
Well, also with military veterans, they get pumped full of so many drugs that they are not aware of. They get that, what do they call it, the peanut butter shot whenever they first enlist, that they don't really know what's in it. They just get it in their butt, and then they're wobbling around for a little while because their leg is like completely sore. And normally people that have seen active combat come back and then they're dosed up with all these psychiatric medications, antidepressants. A lot of them drink. A lot of them are borderline alcoholics, and some full-fledged alcoholics. And then when you look at, what is alcohol? People call that spirits. Spirits infiltrating into your body. So it's like there's this whole array of different openings, I feel, that can be used, and drugs is a very, very popular one because it really opens up what could be considered a portal in your mind.
Yes.
Like a little opening for whatever to infiltrate in there, whether that be electromagnetism, whether that be an entity. There's a little back door that is created with these drugs and with these alcohol that gives the ability for whatever to pop in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I also have a video from a gentleman that I'm going to show here in a few minutes. And when it comes to electromagnetic weapons, we know that they exist. I mean, there's many patents out there on them by the DoD, DARPA, military agencies. And I have a video from a TED Talk from 2004 by a gentleman named Woody Norris, which was the creator of a lot of these technologies. But before we watch that, what do you think was the purpose of creating these weapons to begin with, Elana? Did it come from a benevolent nature and then it was turned malevolent? Because from what I've looked at, they say it's for crowd dispersal, right? And and targets for such as purposes of war and defense strategies to fight terrorism, which without a doubt they are also using that for. But as we know from reading your books and looking more into it, the technology has a dual use, and more specifically, military dual use.
I think it has always been for weaponry in the West. The Western civilization has well, basically is failing now, and for good reason. The idea of this massive standing up army that we have with 6 branches now, and those are only the ones we know about. Not to mention the intelligence agencies that are seem to be serving something other than the people. All of this is intentional and bespeaks a massive need for total control that the military calls the doctrine of full spectrum dominance. I use that term all the time. Full spectrum dominance means primarily complete dominion over the electromagnetic spectrum. And that's where you're talking all the way from radio waves to gamma rays. So let's be under no illusion. This is all part of the secret space program, which has been very influenced by a Soviet astrophysicist named Kardashev. And his idea was that if you're going to be a truly successful civilization with full spectrum dominance, then you're going to need to control your planet, your sun, your planetary system, and the galaxy. So it appears to me, and I very much have ensconced the geoengineering program in the secret space program. It is part of the secret space program. And
I think it's important really quick. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Really quickly to define what you're meaning by a secret space program, because a secret space program has really been hijacked and turned into something that it's not by super soldiers and time travel and fighting aliens in space for 20 years and being age regressed back to the point that they were taken. And I think it's important to make the distinction of what secret space program you're talking about. You're talking about classified space operations that are ran.
That's the cover story, the one you just went through. And you can expect that cover story. It's like the cover story of the UFOs. They're all from aliens, and they're all saucer tech. And there's no science in it. It's just all who's who and what's what and, what planet. And so thanks for bringing that up. Yes, I am not referring to that one, the cover story. I'm referring to the real one, the one that Catherine Austin Fitts and her lawyer friend went deep into in order to find out where the hell $21 trillion of American budgetary money disappeared to. And what the best they could come up with was, it looked like it went straight into the secret space program. And that is a real program. It's called SSP. And it has its own MK Ultras involved in it. But again, you can't trust their stories because, well, the holograms and the sense of reptilians and all that stuff from MK Ultra is brought to bear on that to make doubt in people's minds that we're talking about something real. It's very real. So the secret space program, with its doctrine of full spectrum dominance, thanks to Mr. Kardashev, is what dominates this mindset, this Western military mindset of control at any cost. And I only bring up the secret space program in order to make it clear that there are big dreams going on here of those who are aware of such programs and the money needed in order to carry it out. I mean, think of the chemtrails themselves. Do you have any idea how much money that costs to run those chemicals and nanotech over and over and over every day, so that we are inhaling it and it's going into our blood and then into going beyond the blood-brain barrier into our brains, so that then the 5G, 6G systems can grab hold of those with their radio waves or their microwaves, whichever, and run those nanotech little guys in us and run our brain. So that all is real, but it's such a reach because you haven't been educated in any way, shape, or form to prepare you for realizing that science fiction is becoming science. You haven't, I totally get it. And sometimes I just recently heard that I'm called by some people on the internet, what is the word they use for me? Like a witch or something, like, some crazy old lady, doing witchcraft or something. It's like, wow, I tell you,
That's what they all do whenever they can't have something to say. They immediately attack you and call you an agent, call you working for the CIA, cover up, blah blah blah, witch. It all. They try and throw whatever they can. I've been called so much stuff that it's just ridiculous at this point, and several people are. And that's the other problem and the other issue with not being able to know what we're actually really doing in space is whenever you type into Google secret space program, you get all of this nonsense about 20 and back program, time travel, fighting aliens in space, on Mars and the moon. So it makes it really impossible to figure out really anything that may actually be happening. And I think that was really the goal from the very beginning. It seems like a giant op. A huge op to actually cover up what we're really doing. And we know that Operation Looking Glass was a program ran by the Air Force to put a nuclear command post in space to be able to launch nukes from Earth.
Yes.
And that's one of the real last kind of space operations that we kind of have any information on.
Well,
so it's like,
we still have Looking Glass. I'll just let you know that it's still going on, but maybe not in the way that you were previously conditioned to think of it. But I mean, one thing you can take to the bank is we have not been in space yet because we have those radiation belts, the Van Allen radiation belts to deal with. There has been no human being who has gone beyond those. None. No moonshot. No, nothing. Machines, yes. Machines going up in space, doing, running tests, taking films, whatever. But no human being has been in space yet. And that's the other reason that the transhuman thrust is about that as well, about a cyborg model that can go in space. That's You can take that to the bank. So, did I answer whatever question you asked a long time ago, or should we let that go? I don't know.
Well, I mean, we're having a good conversation here, so I don't mind it. But I do want to play this video over here really quickly and get your comments on it. And it's from a TED Talk in 2004. It's an old video, but it's the gentleman that's giving the TED Talk is named Woody Norris. And
Yeah.
before I play it, I want to let YouTube know that this is covered under fair use, and we're educating the public on this TED Talk from 2004 with Woody Norris. And instead of just talking about what he says, we're going to hear from him exactly the words out of his mouth so that we don't misinterpret what he's saying and we get the correct details. And it is covered under fair use. So here we go. This is Woody Norris from a TED Talk in 2004.
All of audio as we know it is an attempt to be more and more perfectly linear.
And we're pausing here to let YouTube know that we are commenting over this video of Woody Norris, and it is covered under fair use.
Linearity means higher quality sound. Hypersonic sound is exactly the opposite. It's 100% based on nonlinearity. An effect happens in the air. It's a corrupting effect of the sound, the ultrasound in this case, that's emitted. But it's so predictable that you can produce very precise audio out of that effect. Now, the question is, where is the sound made? Instead of being made on the face of the cone, it's made at literally billions of little independent points along this narrow column in the air. And so when I aim it towards you, what you hear is made right next to your ears.
That's really interesting, Elana. Right next to your ears. So it's not something that's coming from miles and miles away. It's these little particles of sound that are being created right next to your ear.
Well, the particles
I said we can shorten
are, but not the wave that's bringing them to the by the ears. That's the idea. The remote. There's a remote part, but yeah, that's right by the ears.
the column. We can spread it
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. We're good.
Okay.
out to cover the couch. I can put it so that one ear hears one speaker, the other ear hears the other. That's true binaural sound. When you listen to stereo in your home system, both ears hear both speakers. Turn on the left speaker sometime and notice you're hearing it also in your right ear. So the stage is more restricted, the sound stage that's supposed to spread out in front of you. Because the sound is made in the air along this column, it does not follow the inverse square law, which says it drops off about 2/3 every time you double the distance. 6 dB every time you go from 1 meter, for instance, to 2 meters. That means you go to a rock concert or a symphony, and the guy in the front row gets the same level as the guy in the back row now, all of a sudden. Isn't that terrific?
Now he's relating this to speaker sounds, but he gets more into what it can be used for here in just a few minutes. But this is the onset of it, and I think it was important to play this whole part, because some people like to just take little clips out and then put it in there and making it seem like he was saying something that he wasn't saying. And I think it's important to actually hear this whole section of this talk.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been, as I say, very successful, very lucky in having companies catch the vision of this, from car makers who want to put a stereo system in the front for the kids, a separate system in the back. Oh, no, the kids aren't driving today. I was seeing if you were listening. Actually, I haven't had breakfast yet. A stereo system in the front for mom and dad. And maybe there's a little DVD player in the back for the kids, and the parents don't want to be bothered with that, or their rap music or whatever. So again, this idea of being able to put sound anywhere you want to is really starting to catch on. It also works for transmitting and communicating data. It also works 5 times better underwater. We've got the military had just...
That's interesting. 5 times better underwater?
Yeah. Oh, well, water, remember, we're 70% water. Water is extremely conductive. right? I mean, it's that's how they get us. That's really because they're doing the water in us when they're hitting us with the sound, particularly infrasound, which I assume he's talking about.
Yes.
Deployed some of these into Iraq where you can put fake troop movements a quarter of a mile away on a hillside.
And people are laughing.
And
But
people are laughing.
he's being dead serious
No,
that they can fake troop movements in Iraq.
Or you can whisper in the ear of a supposed terrorist some biblical verse. I'm serious.
That's the big one right there.
well, that's voice of God he's talking about.
Yep. VOG, voice of God. Yeah, that's it. And people are laughing. That's the interesting. It's an
That's
interesting
how
part.
Americans are. That's just yeah.
They're laughing at him saying that they can put a Bible verse into someone's a terrorist head, and he says it right after. He says, "I'm serious." They don't think he's serious. They're laughing. I'm like, "What do you?" It's unbelievable. But I'm going to finish out the rest of this.
And they have these infrared devices that can look at their countenance and see a fraction of a degree Kelvin in temperature shift from 100 yards away when they play this thing. And so another way of hopefully determining who's friendly and who isn't. We make a version of this which puts out 155 decibels. Pain is 120. So it allows you to go nearly a mile away and communicate with people, and there can be a public beach just off to the side and they don't even know it's turned on. We sell those to the military presently for about $70,000, and they're buying them as fast as we can make them. We put it on a turret with a camera so that when they shoot at you, you're over there and it's there.
Unbelievable.
Yep. That's it.
Unbelievable.
I mean, this sound, you know, this ability he's talking about here, that this was in 2009, you said, or something like that?
2004.
Okay, because the actual ability to do what he's talking about really came out in I believe I'm right, 1970. We had the voice to skull, all of the different. I'm trying to remember the names of it. There's a few guys who were deeply involved in this ability to transfer sound and make it play in the brain, and that was 1970. So, to me, we've had this technology for 50 years, right? 50 years, we've had it, and it has been made good use of. You know, and when the thing happened in Havana, that was very much like the woodpecker. The woodpecker was the very first harp. You could look at it that way. The very first device, just like Tesla's out of Wardenclyffe in New York on Long Island, when they had that forest just razed to the ground in Russia, up there in Siberia, when Tesla turned that force on, which was sound, and just everything was razed to the ground. That's how long we've had this technology, but they've had to work out the kinks. And the main reason it's now coming to, I don't know if that's true. The main reason I think that it's coming to the fore now is that they now have control over the ionosphere, and so they can use the HARP and other ionospheric heater frequencies, bring them together so that they are consolidating and keep the entire atmosphere of the Earth and the human being, because we're very resonant beings, very resonant. It's a strength and a tremendous weakness too. Keep us in a certain frequency in order to control our minds, basically, and our biology. So, you know, this is what MK Ultra really was about. The other bells and whistles were, yeah, okay, you need slaves to go and a little kid have sex with men and maybe assassinate them, maybe just get control over them in some way. But that all was really secondary. I now realize what was really primary and probably was getting most of the money for MK Ultra. Because remember, there were 149 sub projects. Most of them were this ability with electromagnetics. That was what they were after, because they knew that if you can, as Tesla said, if you want to understand everything on the Earth, you need to understand frequency and resonance, and that is so true. And that's why we need to educate ourselves as to frequency and resonance and what does what. I mean, not to the degree I do it, where I'm obsessive about this kind of stuff, but enough that we understand it's a dangerous technology that people think of their fast downloads, and they've got the baby monitors right next to the child's brain. I mean, come on. We're just not thinking. We're not. Americans are kind people, very able to do a lot of things, but they're not very deep. They're really not very deep, and we need deep now, because this technology has been developed to the point that everything that has a frequency and a resonance can be controlled. Let's get that through our thick skulls. This is not fun and games anymore. And that's what my hope is to be able to at least have a few books written for laymen, not completely choked to death by all these acronyms and special terms and numbers, that people can understand what they're living with, what is dual use, as you said. That it's key. It's key. I'm not as impressed by that video, only because I know how long this technology has been around. I would say 1970 we've had this technology. Certainly voice to skull.
Yeah, I think that it was just it's just interesting for people that were not aware that it exists, and it's someone that has actually created this technology, that has patents for it, that sold it to the military, saying that it exists in 2004 and during this TED Talk. I think that's the wow factor there for some people. Now, it's interesting that you bring up the speeds of new technology, because really, Elana, I have not seen a difference in speed since 2012. It's been the same for me since 2012. When I'm not on Wi-Fi, it's the exact same. It has not changed at all. So this false thing that they need to keep increasing it for speeds is ridiculous. I mean, who is downloading a freaking movie not connected to Wi-Fi? You normally download things when you're connected to Wi-Fi anyway.
And they basically lied to us about the promise of the fast movie download too. Yeah, it's all lies.
Yeah, I mean the same speed. I have the exact same speed that I had in 2012. It's literally no different. Whenever I'm at the gym, it's the same. When I'm at the grocery store, it's the same. It hasn't changed. And I have a brand new phone. I have the newest iPhone. It's the same. It's no different. My iPhone, the newest iPhone that I have, it operates the exact same way that my iPhone 12 operated.
Yep.
It's no faster.
No, it's a lie. Just to get it out there, because they're using it for control. If you insist on owning one of those iPhones, you better do some heavy homework on what those apps are really up to. The problem I see, and the big clue about what those iPhones really are, is the addiction from kids to teenagers to adults. The heavy duty addiction. When I bring up at talks about Please get rid of your iPhone. I'm deadly serious. I'm not kidding. Get rid of it. It's a weapon system. It's going to be used on you. And it's being used on you now, but you're not noticing. And people just sort of go deer in the headlights. Deer in the headlights. That indicates it's an addictive process. And if I were making that clever device, if I had been involved in it, shoot, I'd want it addictive too. I'd want it where people just can't live without it. They just can't imagine life without it. Well, I'm living without it. I don't know. I'm doing okay. But I never became accustomed to it. You know, addiction is very hard to break because you become very accustomed to it. You've got a lot of rituals around it. You've got a lot of feelings around it. You've got, and I don't have that. I've never subjected myself to those technologies.
What kind of phone do you use? Do you have an Android? Do you have a flip phone?
I have a landline. My phone
costs no cell phone at all?
No cell phone at all. But I'm friends with a young man who thought I was crazy and wanted to prove me wrong. And so he gave up his iPhone and he got some sort of a phone. I always forget the name of it. But it won't get you on the internet, but it will collect messages and you can dial out and that sort of thing. It's very simple. He said it's the first time he's had his own headspace and he doesn't know how long. He loves it. He loves it. He just can't believe it took him this long. He's 35. Took him this long to wake up to the fact that that technology is a control technology. And I have my own headspace. So I write books. I mean, I have full access to my intelligence. I don't have a leech, a parasite operating on my brain power. I'm deadly serious. I know they're very clever, and they're very convenient. You know, convenience and comfort are like a religion in America. They interpret it as progress, but it's not really progress, is it? It's something else, and I choose to see it as a control feature. So everybody makes their decisions.
Yep, circular. It's going in a circle. It's in a carousel. It's on a Ferris wheel, and it keeps getting regurgitated back. A few things pop up every once in a while that are different, but normally the same type of information gets regurgitated back into the community all the time, and it just becomes this Ferris wheel of information. Circular reporting.
Of control over your mentation. It is entirely about controlling your mentation. So my iPhone, I mean the phone I have, the landline, they now charge me 3 times what they charge you for your cell phone use every month. They're charging us now, those of us who continue to have this kind of phone, they're charging us 3 times the amount. I don't care. I'm just going to continue. It collects messages. I can call in with a number and get my messages from when I'm out touring, giving talks or whatever. So, it works for me. I don't want to talk on the phone all the time anyway. And I certainly don't want people to know where I am all the time.
That's right. There's a certain freedom to not having a cell phone on you 24/7,
Yes.
It's like kind of back in the day when, when you're out, no one can get a hold of you, and there's a certain kind of freedom.
But there's a bigger freedom in that it's your nervous system. It's your nervous system. And yes, you're walking through many waves because of other people's technology. I understand that. But you're moving through that field. You're moving through. It doesn't own you like your cell phone and your IP address or whatever it's called. It's a very different ownership kind of situation.
I agree, absolutely. And Elana, thanks so much for coming on today. I really appreciate you. I love the discussion. I had a wonderful time. Can you let people know where they can find you online? Plug your website, plug your books.
Right. The website I'm not using anymore. I will have some sort of short stack or substack or whatever they call it. I will have one of those someday when I have some time. But it's still, you can go to elanafreeland.com and see where my mindscape has been for the last few decades. You will get that. But for buying the books, I highly recommend. Yes, you can get them from Evil Amazon, but you won't get the color illustrations for the Geoengineered Transhumanism book. I recommend that you get that book. It's expensive because it's big and it has 60 illustrations. That I recommend you get from the Rudolf Steiner bookstore in Seattle, Washington. It's a tiny, tiny bookstore in somebody's backyard. It's got everything I've ever written in book form, including my Sub Rosa America series, which I never talk about. It's a fictional series about what has happened to America since World War II and John Kennedy's assassination. So I highly recommend that. It's probably the greatest writing I've done. And it's Sub Rosa America, A Deep State History. He has that 4-book set, and then he has all my geoengineering books so far. The Inner Traditions geoengineering book will be out in July. Watch for it. It's called The Geoengineered Transhuman. And I think you're going to like that book because I get pretty esoteric in it as well, with some Rudolf Steiner ideas that I feel are very pertinent, similar to how he warned people 100 years ago about the vaccination. Oops, I used that word.
It's all right. Thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate your time. And this has been a wonderful conversation. I would love to have you back on. Once your book comes out in July, I'll be getting it and reading it. The links to Elana's information is in the description of this video. And thanks everyone in the chat. Really appreciate you guys. I really wanted to just concentrate on this conversation here today. So sorry I didn't get to pull up any of your guys' comments on the screen. I didn't want to distract from the conversation, but Gigi, thanks for being here. King James, Paul from Newcastle, Noble Truth, Jay, Candace, see anybody? There's a lot of people in here. They're definitely suppressing the video though. Paul from Newcastle, Sam, good to see you, and Raina. Thanks, guys, and thanks anybody else that was in the chat that contributed to the conversation. Really appreciate you guys, and please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel in the algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications. All right, see you guys next time. Elana, stay with me.